Imagine you're sitting in an airplane, heading into the heart of the Amazonia. Outside the window, as far as the eye can see, stretches an emerald carpet of tropical forest, and on the horizon, leaden storm clouds are gathering. And suddenly, just 15 minutes before the scheduled landing, the light in the porthole dims. Powerful storm begins. The airplane rocks, things fall out of the luggage compartments and fly over people's heads. You're blinded by a sharp flash of white light. Some part of your brain registers a strange thought. The trees below look like broccoli heads, and then everything literally rips you out of the airplane, along with your seat, while the liner disappears into the darkness. For some time, it seems like you're floating in weightlessness, and around you are only streams of rain. But from below, the ground is approaching you from a kilometer height. It looks like a bad dream, but this is the reality that 17-year-old Juliane Koepcke found herself in on Christmas, 1971, and she became one of the luckiest girls of that decade. Juliane wasn't just a random tourist.
Her parents, Hans
Wilhelm, a zoologist, and Maria Koepcke, an ornithologist, moved to Peru for the sake of science. They founded the Panguana Station, a research center for studying mammals, insects, and fish located in the depths of the tropical forests of the Peruvian lowlands. Due to the remoteness of the station, their daughter, Juliane, studied at home for several years, until local education authorities demanded that she return to Lima to finish high school. But in her soul, by her own words, she always remained a child of the jungle. By the end of December of the 71st year, Juliane successfully graduated from school. Initially, she and her mother planned to return to the station a week before Christmas, but they postponed the flight for several days so Juliane could attend the diploma ceremony. When mother and daughter were ready to fly back to Panguana, the only available tickets were on LANSA airline flight departing at noon on December 24th. LANSA was a commercial Peruvian airline that by that time already had a bad reputation. In the 6th year, a pilot error on Flight 101 from Lima to Cusco led to the plane crashing into a mountain slope. All 49 people on board died. 4 years later, on Flight 502, an engine caught fire and it crashed into a valley. Then, 99 people on board and 2 more on the ground died. The cause was again pilot error and poor maintenance. Juliane's father knew that the Lockheed L-188 Electra had a terrible reputation. Out of 170 built Electras, many were written off after accidents or serious malfunctions in the air. He urged them to find another route, but Christmas was approaching, and with no better options, Juliane and her mother took tickets on Flight 508 from Lima to Quitos. Sitting in the second row from the back, Juliane took the window seat and her mother in the middle. They were eating sandwiches. Outside the window, the plane flew into a real storm hell. Turbulence tossed the liner back and forth. Bags, wrapped gifts, and clothes fell out of the overhead compartments. Trays with sandwiches flew around the cabin, and unfinished drinks spilled on passengers' heads. People screamed and cried. Juliane's mother nervously endured flights. In a half-whisper, she said, "I hope everything will be okay." And then into their plane struck lightning. Juliane recounted how she saw a blinding flash, after which the plane seemed to start diving down. "Now, it's all over," Juliane recalled the strangely calm voice of Maria, then the screams of other passengers and the deafening roar of the engines seemed to disappear. The next thing I realized, I was no longer in the cabin. I was outside in the open air. I didn't leave the plane left me. The entire row of 3 seats flew down, spiraling. Juliane, apparently the only one in her row who was buckled in complete solitude, part Of this time she was conscious but lost it just before landing. Waking up in liquid mud, she saw above her the green canopy of the jungle. I lay like an embryo the rest of the day and all night until the next morning, she wrote, feeling abandoned, helpless, and completely alone. Every attempt to move was accompanied by a wave of dizziness and nausea. She heard the quiet ticking of the watch on her wrist but couldn't even focus her gaze to make out the time. In the morning, she still tried to unbuckle from the seat and assess her injuries. Stunned and disoriented, she assumed she had a concussion. Her shoulder and leg burned with pain from deep wounds. A broken collarbone caused agony. With every movement, one eye was swollen shut. Her glasses were lost and the world around Juliane was blurry. Her mother's seat next to her was empty. She quietly called for her, but only the sounds of the jungle answered. The fact that she survived was already almost a miracle, and to survive with such minor injuries was a miracle doubled. It's believed that powerful updrafts of air and the rotation of the seat like a maple seed slowed the fall speed, and additionally the force of the impact was softened by the resilient tree crowns. Later it was revealed that another 14 passengers on the flight survived the fall like Juliane but received too severe injuries to move and died within a few days, and search planes couldn't even see them under the dense tree canopy. Juliane heard the noise of search plane engines, screamed, and tried to find some open area, but all around was only thicket. Finding her mother and other survivors among the undergrowth also failed, but she managed to find a stream and followed it in the hope that it would lead her to a big river, and the river to people. I learned the sounds of the wild from inside out, she recalled. This meant that home was somewhere nearby, but when you're in the largest tropical forest in the world, distances take on a completely different scale, and one wrong turn can lead you into depths where no human foot will step for the next centuries. But Juliane was lucky here too. Being the daughter of biologists who studied the Amazon forest, there was nothing her parents hadn't taught her for surviving in these conditions. But for survival, equipment is needed. On her, there was only a torn sundress and one sandal. The jungle is ruled by insects, and Juliane encountered them all. Ants, beetles, mosquitoes, harmless wild bees crawled through her hair, and flies were already laying their larvae in her open wounds. It was the rainy season, and there were no familiar fruits. Juliane knew that most of what grows in the jungle is poisonous and stayed away from anything unfamiliar. Catching fish or digging up edible roots she couldn't do without any gear or at least a knife. With her, she had only a packet of candies found in the wreckage, which she tried to sustain her remaining strength with, eating one at a time. Walking along the river was difficult and dangerous. The bank literally teemed with camouflaged venomous snakes. At first, she tried to step carefully through the shallows so as not to disturb the stingrays, which in fright could sting her legs with their venomous tails. But the path turned out so slow that eventually she moved to the middle of the channel and started floating. She still had to beware of piranhas and caimans, but she knew that piranhas are dangerous only in pools and most often don't attack people. After sunset, she found the most open spot on the sandy bank and lay down to sleep on it, shivering all over from cold and dampness while mosquitoes and midges swarmed over her head, trying to get into her nose and ears. On the fourth day, bird cries led Juliane to a horrific scene. 2 men and 1 woman, still buckled to their seats, had hit the ground with such force that they were half buried in the soil. Juliane's heart clenched. She feared discovering her mother's body. Then she took a stick and carefully turned the woman's body until she saw the toes. The nails were painted. Her mom never painted her nails. In this strange gesture, there was relief. Mom was somewhere out there, unknown, whether alive or dead. On the 6th day of her journey, she heard the voices of birds that, as she knew, live only near areas of wide, open water. Gathering her remaining strength, she rushed along the stream toward the sounds of their voices, and soon their hum was heard very far away and soon faded. Juliane was overcome by rage and despair. She wrote, "It seemed to me they found and rescued everyone except one, me, and simply gave up. Very soon she had almost no strength left to walk. She still filled her stomach with river water so the hunger wasn't so acute. Maggots successfully tried to burrow into her wounds. She attempted to extract them with a stick. It became increasingly difficult for her to climb over fallen tree trunks in the river. The sun came out, and in just 1 day of travel, Juliane got second-degree burns on her back and neck. Many times it seemed to her that she saw the roof of a hut on the bank, but it turned out to be just a deceptive play of light between the trees. Therefore, when she finally saw a moored boat, she hurried faster. Next to the boat lay a motor and a canister of gasoline. There were no people nearby. By this time, all her open wounds were already swarming with wriggling larvae, 35 in just one arm alone. Not wanting to steal the boat, Juliane found a path up the bank. She was so weak that it took her several hours to climb the hill, but her efforts were rewarded. On the hill stood a small hut with a roof of palm leaves. Inside there was no one, but Juliane was glad to hide from the rain and for the first time in 10 days spend the night in a dry place. In the morning, she barely found the strength to get up and decided to stay resting in the hut for another day before setting out again. At midnight, she heard voices outside. Again, she didn't believe her ears and considered the voices hallucinations until finally 3 Peruvian loggers entered the hut. They froze in stupor, seeing an exhausted, injured, fragile blonde in mud and rags of clothing. They decided they had encountered a water spirit from the folklore of Amazonian Indians who, by day, looks like a freshwater Amazonian dolphin and at night takes the form of a light-haired woman. But Juliane spoke to them in Spanish. "I'm the girl from the LANSA flight. My name is Juliane." The loggers shared food with her, bandaged her wounds as best they could, and the next day sent her downstream for 7 hours by canoe, bringing her to civilization where she could be taken to a hospital. And then they connected her with her father. Meeting for the first time, they sat for a long time, in silence, embracing. All the subsequent days, her father desperately waited for news about the search for her mother, until on January 12th her body was found. It was established that she, like Juliane, survived the fall but received 2 severe injuries and died several days later. "I'm afraid to think what it was like for her in those last days," her daughter said. Out of 92 people on board, only Juliane survived. Thanks to her detailed descriptions of the crash site, all bodies were found, although some wreckage remained in the jungle to this day. Later, it was revealed that the LANSA plane was assembled literally from spare parts of other planes, and the official cause of the tragedy was recognized as the airline's decision to send the plane despite unfavorable weather conditions. LANSA was banned from flights and closed permanently. Having survived, Juliane joined a very small club of those who survived similar falls. Just a year after Juliane, 20-year-old Serbian flight attendant Vesna Vulovic set a record by surviving a fall from a height 3 times greater than Juliane's, 9,000 meters. Though with severe injuries, she was saved by a thick layer of snow. Juliane was saved by a sum of factors. the rotation of the seat, updrafts of air, and, of course, a considerable dose of luck. She sees in this some divine plan. The power of nature is immense, but sometimes it gives a tiny chance, she said later. The jungle, which could have become her grave, turned out to be her salvation. It softened the impact, gave water, helped her survive. Knowledge of its laws allowed her not to give in to panic. She left for Germany, graduated from university, and became a biologist specializing in bats. She married a scientist, ethnologist, and took the surname Diller. Today she manages Panguana and the tropical ecosystem of the Amazon. She writes, "The jungle is as much a part of me as my love for my husband, the music of Amazonian tribes, and my friends. Knowledge of the jungle's laws and incredible courage helped a fragile girl turn nature from an enemy into a faithful ally and survive when she had already been practically declared dead, proving that the world is sometimes more complex and kinder than it seems." This was the story of the survivor. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.